Now we're going on to Prep Test 152, Section 3, Passage 2. This is a humanities passage about whether Hollywood musicals break a film scholar's definition of classical filmmaking. This is a medium difficulty passage. The ideas here are not complicated, but paragraph 3 changes midstream, and if you don't catch the turn, you're going to answer 2 or 3 questions from the wrong perspective. Now, this is a takedown passage. The author puts someone else's theory on the table, pokes a hole in it, and then shows that the scholar's own patch job still leaks. Now, the most important paragraph is paragraph 3. That is where the fight happens. Paragraphs 1 and 2 are just loading the gun. So if you gave all 3 paragraphs equal attention, you spent too long on the setup. Now, paragraph 1 lays out Bordwell's definition of classical Hollywood style. Now, the core idea here is simple. Everything in a classical film serves the story. Camera, lighting, editing, sound, all of it works to make you forget you're watching a movie. The world on screen is supposed to feel real and self-contained. Anything that reminds you there's a camera there gets avoided. Now, you want to read this at normal speed. Don't memorize the examples, just lock in the definition. Story first, filmmaking invisible. Then paragraph 2 is the challenge round. The author says musicals don't fit that definition. And then Berkeley shows up as the proof. A scene starts with somebody singing, but then the image dissolves into these wild aerial shots and abstract visual patterns that have zero to do with the plot. Now, the camera work in those moments is not serving the story. It's doing its own thing. The filmmaking isn't hiding anymore. It's the whole point. So the author asks the question you should already be asking. Can musicals really belong inside Bordwell's box? You can move through the Berkeley details quickly because they're evidence, not argument. The question at the end of the paragraph is what you're carrying into paragraph 3. Now, paragraph 3 is where you want to slow down. That's where most students get it wrong. It opens with Bordwell's defense. He says musicals evolved from live theater. Audiences already knew the deal. You watch a story, then a performance interrupts it, and then the story comes back. Because viewers expected that pattern, it didn't feel strange. It counted as realistic. And that sounds like a pretty solid answer. And that is exactly the problem. Because if you buy it, you're going to miss the author pulling the rug out in the second half of the paragraph. Watch for the word but halfway through, because everything before it is Bordwell talking. Everything after it is the author saying no. Now, the author's counter has 2 layers. First, these musical numbers aren't just neat little breaks from the plot. They are self-absorbed. And that word there is doing heavy lifting. The author is saying the performances don't just pause the story, they hijack your attention. They want you to admire the filmmaking. And that's the exact thing Bordwell's own definition says classical Hollywood doesn't do. So the genre defense circles right back into the original problem. Now, the second layer, even if you know you're watching a musical, you still feel the break. The author says watching a film is a perceptual act, meaning it's something that happens to you in real time. You can't just think your way past it because you know what genre you're in. That is the author calling Bordwell's approach too academic. It's too detached from what actually happens when someone sits in a theater. Now, the last 2 sentences are the author's prescription. Bordwell should have started by studying how viewers actually process images on screen before making big claims about realism. That is the author's final position. You skipped a step. Now, the key move here that you should know is that paragraph 3 splits in half. The first half is Bordwell's best defense. The second half dismantles it. Now, if you read that paragraph as one continuous argument going in one direction, you would have gotten the author's stance wrong. The turn happens at the word but, so you want to find that. Now, the main trap is thinking Bordwell won the argument, but he didn't. He got a rebuttal and the author rejected it. If a question asks about the author's attitude toward Bordwell's response, the answer is going to be critical. Wrong answers are going to make it sound like the author accepted the genre explanation or found it mostly convincing. Now, you should also watch for a question about that word self-absorbed. The passage draws a clear line between self-contained and self-absorbed, and that distinction is important doing real structural work. Self-contained means the performance is just its own thing, separate from the plot. Self-absorbed means it's actively pulling attention toward itself. The author uses the second one to show the problem is worse than Bordwell admits. Before you hit the questions, you want to check yourself on 3 things. First, why doesn't the genre argument actually fix the problem with Bordwell's definition? Second, what is the author saying when they call film watching a perceptual act? And third, what does the author think Bordwell should have done differently from the start?